Tonight, conviction overturned. A judge accused of a critical error in the trial of disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein. The stunning reversal.
This today is an act of institutional betrayal.
In a defining case of the Me Too era.
We knew that Harvey Weinstein did not get a fair trial.
Honda revs up electric vehicle plans supported by taxpayer dollars.
New facilities, new plants that are going to employ 1,000 new workers.
Plus, double legal trouble for Donald Trump as executive power comes under the U.S. Supreme Court microscope.
Presidential immunity is imperative, or you practically won't have a country anymore.
Look at the bill! Oh my heavens! What a goal!
Also, remembering Bob Cole, the legendary voice of Canada's game. And pouring it all into a new musical.
We hope it'll make people laugh. We hope it'll surprise people.
A coffee giant searches for success on the stage.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. A case that triggered a global social movement and ended in a landmark Me Too legal ruling against one of Hollywood's most powerful men was overturned today. New York's top court reversing Harvey Weinstein's rape conviction. For his more than 100 accusers, a shock, and for him, a victory. Although the 72-year-old will remain in prison because of another rape conviction in Los Angeles under appeal. Manhattan's district attorney's office is vowing to retry the New York case, which means some of Weinstein's accusers may be forced to testify again. CTV's Geneviève Beauchemin on what's next.
A stunning reversal in a case that helped trigger the Me Too movement. New York's top court ruled Harvey Weinstein, once one of the most powerful men in Hollywood, had not received a fair trial. In a split 4-3 decision, New York's top court ruled the trial judge made errors, including a crucial mistake by allowing a series of women who said Weinstein assaulted them to testify, while their accusations were not actually part of the charges against him.
In that courthouse at trial, the laws were perverted because there was so much pressure, because Harvey was the face of this movement, that he had to be convicted.
Ashley Judd, the first actress to come forward, called the news unfair to survivors.
This today is an act of institutional betrayal.
Weinstein was serving a 23-year sentence in upstate New York after being convicted of sexually assaulting 2 women. But more than 100 had come forward saying Weinstein abused his power to coerce them into unwanted sexual acts.
He's behind bars where he belongs because he's a criminal.
Among the silence breakers is Quebec actress Erica Rosenbaum. She was in her early 20s when she met Weinstein.
The legal system as it is just not built to convict. And so survivors go out on a limb and tell their stories and re-traumatize themselves for the sake of these trials, and then something like this happens.
The district attorney has vowed to do everything possible to retry the case, but women's groups worry some survivors may be discouraged, re-traumatized by the decision. Still, they say this is not a blow to the Me Too movement, but another clarion call.
In 2017, survivors all around the world said, "Me too, this happened to me." And it opened a door on understanding sexual violence across all sectors.
Despite this decision, Weinstein is not a free man. He was convicted in a separate case of rape at a Beverly Hills hotel and is expected to go serve his sentence in California next. Omar.
Geneviève, thanks. Justices at the U.S. Supreme Court spent nearly 3 hours today in a hearing that will ultimately decide whether a former American president is immune from federal prosecution over acts while in office and whether a trial can take place before the November election. That case, as Donald Trump's hush money trial, resumed in New York today. Here's CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbin.
In New York, it was candidate Donald Trump out campaigning before returning to court as a criminal defendant in an historic hush money trial.
I think that the Supreme Court has a very important argument before it today. I would have loved to have been there.
Trump would rather be at the high court where protesters gathered, and Trump's legal team argued that the former president should have absolute immunity from federal charges that he plotted to overturn the 2020 election, culminating in the January 6th Capitol attack. The liberal judges seem skeptical.
If the potential for criminal liability is taken off the table, wouldn't there be a significant risk that future presidents would be emboldened to commit crimes with abandon while they're in office?
But the conservative justices, 3 appointed by Trump, seemed open to some form of immunity, fearing future presidents could be hounded by politically motivated prosecutions.
This case has huge implications for the presidency, for the future of the presidency, for the future of the country, in my view.
As the justices wrestled with presidential immunity that lower courts have already rejected, Trump was listening to his old friend David Pecker, a former tabloid publisher, describing their catch-and-kill scheme, detailing the payoff to Playboy playmate Karen McDougal to buy and bury a year-long alleged affair. Pecker testified, "We didn't want the story to embarrass Mr. Trump or hurt the campaign." But Pecker wanted nothing to do with porn star Stormy Daniels. "I'm not a bank," Pecker said, and told Trump and his fixer Michael Cohen to buy Stormy's silence just weeks before the election. Trump is charged with falsifying business documents to illegally influence the 2016 election.
The High Court will take months to decide if Trump has immunity or can be prosecuted. Any delay is a win for Trump, likely putting off his January 6th criminal trial until after Americans vote. Omar?
Joy Melvin in Washington. The University of Southern California has canceled its main graduation ceremony in a major fallout of the flaring unrest across American college campuses over the conflict in the Middle East. There were more violent confrontations from coast to coast today. At Emory University in Atlanta, police were filmed using a taser on a handcuffed man.
What are you doing?
In Texas, police brought in horses to tame the crowd, officers grabbing this news camera person and thrusting him to the ground. And at the epicenter of the protests, students camped out at Columbia are nearing a 4 a.m. deadline to disperse or be forced out. Most protesters are calling for an end to the war and for their universities to cut ties with companies linked to Israel.
It makes me feel threatened and intimidated, and I think that the anti-Semitic rhetoric must be condemned.
One father joined his daughter in protest.
I will be the happiest daddy if she's doing the right thing, and I know she's doing the right thing.
A week since protests escalated, school administrations have largely failed to diffuse tensions. And heated moments in the Ontario legislature today over a piece of clothing that has come to symbolize solidarity with Palestinians.
Sarah Janma, you are named. You must leave the chamber.
An independent lawmaker was expelled for the day for refusing to remove her keffiyeh, a scarf typically worn in Arab cultures that is now banned in the provincial legislature.
The rules very specifically apply to anybody speaking up against genocide, against anti-Palestinian racism.
Premier Doug Ford and all of Ontario's political leaders have called the policy divisive and have urged the Speaker to reconsider it. More details today on the parts and labor involved in a multi-billion-dollar deal with one of the world's largest automakers. Honda is set to build an electric vehicle battery plant in Ontario, the third to do so in the province, along with Volkswagen and Stellantis. CTV's Adrian Gobriel digs into how many jobs will be created and how much they will cost.
Hey, there we go. Now that's green.
Political handiwork and plenty of glad handing were on full display today as both Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Ontario Premier Doug Ford popped the hood on their historic deal with Honda.
We're building the careers of the future. Our economic policies, including our climate policies, are attracting global investors.
And it's a substantial investment. Honda's expenditure totals $15 billion. Ottawa has pledged $2.5 billion in tax credits, while Ontario is committing $2.5 billion in incentives, which will in part build a new electric vehicle manufacturing plant and an EV battery facility here in Alliston, Ontario, while creating Canada's first comprehensive electric vehicle supply chain. As for how many jobs this public investment will create, when pressed by journalists today, the Prime Minister was no longer in the mood for pleasantries.
If you're not going to listen to the answer of it saying 1,000 jobs created, then there's nothing we can do for you.
Ottawa does claim that the two new Alliston plants will create 1,000 positions, though the combined $5 billion government investment also includes two other yet-to-be-announced Honda facilities. The details remain a tightly guarded secret.
We don't know how many jobs just yet, and we don't know exactly where.
Well, we do, and stay tuned.
My question's for anyone who can answer it clearly. How much is the government paying for each of those jobs through the tax credits and the deal that is on the table?
This is generational. This is decades and decades down the road. What price do you put on that?
While there wasn't a politician in the plant today who could answer that question clearly, industry leaders believe that following the Honda deal, Canada will now face even stiffer global competition in the race to lure other auto giants.
This is a highly competitive environment. I expect the Americans to respond and other jurisdictions to respond by adjusting what they offer.
As for the EV supply chain tax credit being offered to Honda by Ottawa, it was just announced in the latest federal budget, and that has yet to pass through Parliament. Omar.
Adrian Gabriel in Alliston, Ontario. We are learning tonight the body of a Montreal man who died while on vacation in Cuba last month was mistakenly sent to Russia. The family of Faraj Jarjour says they have received proof from the federal government after the wrong body was sent back to Montreal last week. Jarjour's daughter still processing the ordeal.
Je sais pas si je suis content qu'on a trouvé et si je suis comme triste qu'il est pas là encore. C'est mélangé, on est mélangé. En même temps, on est fatigué. On veut tout ce qui se passe vite, mais on n'a pas de choix.
Cuba has refunded the Jarjour family $10,000 paid to repatriate their father. They still don't know when he will be returned home. Two 14-year-olds have been charged with second-degree murder over the stabbing death of another teen in Halifax.
We certainly hope that, this does bring some measure of comfort to the family and the community.
The 16-year-old victim was killed at a shopping center on Monday. He and his family had come to Canada fleeing the war in Syria. Police believe the killing was not a random act and are now investigating the relationship between the victim and the accused. And police are on the hunt for a killer in Metro Vancouver. 2 knife attacks in 48 hours in one of the region's best-loved tourist spots has left people on edge. CTV's BC Bureau Chief Andrew Johnson on the tragedy and the investigation.
It's a beautiful seaside spot known for its picturesque pier and for being safe. But 2 attacks in 2 days have made for a terrifying wake-up call in White Rock.
Well, I've lived here for 45 years, so I was completely shocked.
The latest, Tuesday night at the waterfront, 28-year-old Kulwinder Sohi was sitting near the beach when he was stabbed and couldn't be saved. We spoke with his roommate today.
The guy came from the back, punched him on the head, and stabbed him in the chest. If it's a public place, if we are not safe on the public space, then where we are safe? In our homes? Like, should we just don't leave our homes?
2 days earlier, a young married couple were sitting on a bench nearby when a stranger came up behind them and stabbed Manpreet Kaur's husband in the neck.
Maybe it's a God's grace that he's alive, he's surviving, he's with me.
As they hunt for a killer, police say they don't know at this point if the attacks are random or whether someone could be targeting the South Asian community, but they insist the city is safe.
I don't think that we're in a situation where people have to dramatically alter their lives. I would be walking with my family as per normal. I would allow my mother to walk as per normal in the area.
For now, officers have increased patrols along the White Rock waterfront as people in the area anxiously await any word of an arrest. Andrew Johnson, CTV News, Vancouver.
A moment of silence tonight for hockey fans from British Columbia to Newfoundland. Legendary broadcaster Bob Cole has died at the age of 90. The St. John's native narrated some of the most memorable hockey nights in Canada. CTV's Garrett Barry has the play-by-play on his life and legacy.
Coming up, look at Lemieux! Oh my heavens! What a move! What a move! Lemieux! Oh baby!
He was the voice of hockey for generations. In a play-by-play career that spanned 50 years, Bob Cole's colorful prose lifted the action off of the ice and into the homes of millions.
They're going home! Yeah, they're going home!
Generations of Canadians today remember their favorite hockey moments, their Saturday nights, with Bob Cole's distinctive voice.
I can still hear his voice now on Hockey Night in Canada. I'm sure everybody across Canada can.
And in Newfoundland and Labrador, he was one of our own, a link to Canada's game in a small province that doesn't often see itself in the starting lineup.
Hearing him call games allowed us to dream, allowed us to realize that we could achieve great heights because you could hear it, you could see him, you could feel it.
Born in 1933, Cole started as a radio DJ at a local station in St. John's. But he got a big break in '56 when he met with Foster Hewitt and learned some finer points of sports broadcasting. He called his first hockey games on the radio, then moved to television. In 1996, he was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. His professionalism earned him the respect of players and coaches.
I always had a great rapport with Bob and just had absolutely nothing but respect for him. So the hockey world lost a real good human being today.
If you were lucky enough to have Bob Cole voice your highlights, it stuck with you forever.
And when you're you're an Ontario kid, it's pretty special when those guys are calling your name out there.
His career continued until 2019 when he was given a send-off by fans in Montreal.
It's been a pleasure. Gonna miss this, let me tell you that, for sure.
Garrett Barry, CTV News, St. John's.
Coming up, the capital gains crunch on cottagers.
They're pretty upset right now.
Middle-class Canadians speak out against Trudeau's new tax. Plus, fast food hits the big stage. More pushback on the federal government's capital gains tax changes, this time from cottage owners, who some realtors say are racing to sell before the new rules come into effect on June 25th. Here's an example of the difference. Assuming the cottage is not your primary residence, if you bought it for $250,000 and sold it for $750,000, that's a $500,000 profit, and you'd owe $250,000 in taxes. But after June 25th, you would owe more than $291,000 in taxes. CTV's Heather Wright on the tax change aimed at the wealthy that some say could end up impacting the middle class.
Add cottagers to the list of Canadians disappointed with the federal budget and the changes being made around capital gains.
Most of the calls that I'm getting are from people that want to hand their cottages down as opposed to sell them. They're pretty upset right now.
Many are worried they won't be able to afford the increased tax bill that will come when the family cottage is passed down.
What it's affecting is 99% of average Canadians that have inherited a cottage from their parents or have purchased one and are simply trying to maintain a recreational home.
Right now, only 50% of capital gains are taxable. The budget proposes to increase that to 2/3 of a capital gain above $250,000. Children inheriting even a modest family cottage will now have to pay even more just to keep it.
The reality is that fewer cottages will be maintained by ordinary middle-class Canadians.
The government says these changes, which impact anyone selling property, stocks, or mutual funds, for example, are aimed at fairness and will generate billions of dollars in much-needed new revenue while impacting only a small percentage of the population.
Most Canadians pay nothing, and these additional revenues that are being paid really just help to level the playing field and eliminate a problem where some high-income families right now are not paying their fair tax rates.
But doctors, tech leaders, and entrepreneurs have all been speaking out, worried it will stifle investment and reduce productivity.
In a moment where productivity is a real issue, where growth is a real issue, whereas we as Canadians are struggling to be productive, we're seeing the government move on measures to make investment and investing in our future more expensive.
These changes will come into effect at the end of June. Many tax experts say they are being inundated with calls from clients, and some are urging the government to delay the changes and give people more time to prepare. Omar.
All right, Heather, thanks. Still ahead.
Basically went from not being able to walk very far at all to having my life back.
The first of its kind surgery with a robot assist. More than 100 pilot whales have been rescued from a beach after a mass stranding in Western Australia. The animals became stuck in shallow waters today. Wildlife officers working desperately to rescue them. Most made it back out to the ocean, but sadly, 29 could not be saved. Marine officials are now monitoring the pods to ensure they don't return to shore. A pioneering Canadian medical first has made walking pain-free possible for a London, Ontario man.
Basically went from not being able to walk very far at all to having my life back.
Dave Mine is the first Canadian to receive a robotic-assisted surgery on his spine. The 57-year-old had extreme pain in his lower back and right leg when he opted for the procedure. He was home within days and is thankful for the freedom he has regained.
From putting on your socks to, leaning over the sink to brush your teeth.
The surgery was in February, and Mine will remain in recovery for a few more months. An estimated 1 in 5 Canadians suffers from chronic back pain. After the break.
It couldn't be anything more Canadian.
A new musical is brewing, courtesy of a Canadian coffee icon. A familiar coffee chain is officially entering show business with a new musical focused on one of its staple sweets. It launches in June and is hoping to serve up the success from the Canadian smash hit Come From Away. CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver has the story.
Can I do a big box of Timbits, please?
Yes, like 10, 20 or 50.
One of Canada's favorite sweet snacks is about to take a bite out of Broadway. And its producers promise that in just a few short months, the last Timbit will have fans humming.
It's going to be what, Timbits running around on the stage or stuff? I don't know.
I could see a really dramatic, climactic ending where it finally gets eaten. And I think that would be about it. That'd be neat.
Whether the last Timbit gets eaten is still a surprise. But despite its name, the musical's focus isn't so much on the treat, but rather on the community created at Timmy's, the heart of many Canadian towns.
We at first thought it was a little outlandish, but very soon in conversation, we realized, Tim's is a pretty iconic part of most Canadians' lives, and it accompanies usually huge moments in a life.
The production is loosely based on a dangerous winter whiteout that hit Sarnia, Ontario in 2010, stranding drivers on highways and one group of strangers inside a Tim Hortons. That experience, which includes the deep desire for a birthday Timbit, is all the way for Tim Hortons to mark its 60th birthday.
This made total sense to me to celebrate this iconic brand with a musical that takes place in the Tim Hortons. It couldn't be anything more Canadian.
While much about the musical remains a secret, fans are being promised a mix of humor and heart.
We hope it'll surprise people and ultimately be kind of moving because it's about the power of community, which I think we can all connect to and find a way to sing about.
The uniquely Canadian content hits a Toronto stage in June. Annie Bergeron-Oliver, CTV News, Ottawa.
And that's a snapshot of this Thursday. Heather is here tomorrow. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching and good night.